School mediation, a conversation with Ondine Gross. That is our topic for today.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Welcome everyone to this very special live stream on the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, brought to you by instantmediations.com. I am Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate and mediator from Warsaw, Poland.
And hi, I'm Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas, but now I'm located next to my business partner, Natalia, in Warsaw. Our guest today is Ondine Gross. Ondine is a nationally certified school psychologist who has worked in public schools for more than 30 years. Ondine is also a licensed psychotherapist who speaks publicly on a wide range of issues that relate primarily to improving social and emotional wellness in schools. Ondine is also the author of the book, Restore the Respect: How to Mediate School Conflicts and Keep Students Learning.
Ondine, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today during this back-to-school season to discuss school mediation. To start things off, please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Mac and Natalia, for having me and inviting me today. I'm delighted to be here with you. So I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I started my career working in diverse school districts in Southern California and Northern California. During that time, I got trained on being a psychotherapist as well. We moved to the Midwest in about the early 90s, and I continued my career as a school psychologist in a public high school and found a lot of the same issues, despite the fact that my school was in a different state and a different even socioeconomic background and racial background than some of the places where I'd worked in California. And I noticed a lot of the same issues. So I'm also the mother of two children. And around the time that they went away to college, I faced a lot of things that a lot of people do, which is, okay, what do I do next? And I thought, why don't I go back to school and learn how to be a school principal? So I went and got a second master's degree in school administrative training, thinking that I would find all the answers to educational problems, and came to learn that actually there is no answer book. And that it really is on all of us to kind of develop our own solutions in the setting where we work, based on the students and the populations and the issues and the staff and so forth. And I also, during that time, got training in mediation, which was always something in the back of my mind that might be something I'd like to try. So I got the traditional 40-hour mediation training. And I think because of that confidence of learning that there is no answer book and really you have to be creative, I took mediation and thought, let's adapt this for school use.
Got it. Thank you, Ondine. And most people who are watching us, when they are learning about this topic, they may not know that much about school mediation. Now, they may know about school because they were students themselves, or they have students who are going through schools right now. So for most people who are unfamiliar with school mediation, this is your specialty. Can you describe what it is and why you've devoted your life's work to this mission?
I'd be happy to, Mac. You know, first, I just would like to ask people if you've ever heard a student say, my teacher hates me. You know, you guys are sitting in Europe. I've asked this question to rooms full of people around the country, and almost all the hands go up. My teacher hates me. My teacher's racist. Or teachers who might say, my student just doesn't care. The problem with this is that it's one-dimensional. And most teachers and students don't have a way to forge a more deep, trustful, caring relationship in the traditional school model of, come in, open your books, and let's get to it. So when a student gets into a pattern of behavior where they get sent out a lot and get a lot of discipline action, it really is a downward spiral. Low academic achievement, disruptive behavior, truancy, and it really impacts the whole climate, of course, in the classroom and in the school at large. So I had observed this problem throughout my career, and then I observed something else that I just thought was weird. And that is, let's take an example. Let's say Tiffany mouths off to her teacher. She's a sophomore in a high school class and says, you know, I won't use the swear word, but she curses at her teacher and storms out of the class. So what's going to happen with Tiffany? Tiffany will get sent to the office. She'll get a detention. Somebody will call home. She'll have to serve detention. Maybe if there's been repeated problems, she'll get suspended. And God forbid there was maybe a threat of some sort. She could even get up for expulsion. But in a more, mild case, Tiffany would get sent to class, open the door, go, return a day or two later, and then just carry on as though nothing had happened. And I thought, this is so weird, because in life, if you have an outburst, you've got to kind of go mop up later. You have to communicate with people. You've got to talk about what just happened and, maybe make amends. So I thought, we're not teaching kids how to conduct themselves when they do make a mistake. They're not learning the communication skills or the problem solving skills or the conflict resolution skills or anything else. So given my training in mediation, I saw a really simple model that I wanted to adapt for school use. And I'll tell you about the model in a second, but we said, look, if a teacher sends out a student with repeated discipline referrals, let's invite that teacher and student into a mediation. So, or let's just let mediation be available if a teacher or student requests it, just completely voluntary. So we decided to pilot it in my high school of about 1,400 kids. We set up some criteria because we were going to collect data. And the data was that if after the mediation, there's no more discipline referrals from that teacher to that student, we would consider that as successful mediation. Well, the data started rolling in and it turned out to be pretty excellent, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but let's talk about the technique first. So the mediations would be held in a typical class period of 55 minutes. I would be the mediator. I would review the mediation technique, which is I'm going to ask each of you to tell me what brought us here today. Each person will be able to talk to me as mediator. While one person's talking, the other person just listens. I'll summarize what I've heard and ask clarifying questions. Then it's the other person's turn. I'll summarize and then invite both of you to speak directly to each other to develop a plan to move forward. And the only principles of mediation are that it's voluntary. As your mediator, I'm impartial and neutral. This meeting is confidential. And we also practice self-determination, which is what you choose to talk about is completely up to you. So within that structure, I discovered two important things. The impact of what I call mining for gold, that at some point in the mediation, you want to elicit some positive regard or positive observations from one party toward the other. And that would be a life-changing moment because you would just literally see the relaxation and healing right before your eyes. And the other thing was to infuse the meeting with a lot of thanks and praise. So this practice took hold. It grew and grew and grew. And we collected the data and we saw an average of like 82% of the times we had these meetings, there were no further discipline referrals. And that it started to become part of the school culture, and teachers would ask for it to even address maybe a withdrawn student because they wouldn't know why a student, had stopped performing. So, and students would ask for it just to even build better rapport with their teachers. And it was so simple and so game-changing that I thought, oh my gosh, why isn't everyone doing this? And which is why I wrote the book and I'm here today.
So thank you for that. You actually taught a training course that I went to just a few weeks ago. So we got a firsthand chance to listen to all of this, and it was really informative ideas. So thank you so much for that. Just wanted to bring people up to that knowledge.
Mark and I were watching a YouTube video where you show a simulation of a teacher-student mediation. It involves a dispute between a high school freshman and his choir teacher. We'd like to play a couple of short clips from this video, and we would like to Ondine to ask you to please share some insights into what we've just seen and give us your opinions on it.
Sure. Ms. Denser and Jonathan, welcome to Mediation. I'm so glad you're here. And before we get started, I want to offer you both a snack. Everybody hungry?
Nothing.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to ask each of you to tell me what brought us here today. While one person is talking, I'll take notes and ask questions and kind of summarize what I hear as we go. And the other person can just sit back, relax, and listen. Then the other person has a turn, and I'll ask the same question and take notes and all of that. And then at the end, I will summarize what I've heard from both of you and ask that you speak directly to each other to develop your plan to move forward. The only rules of mediation are only one person speaks at a time, no interruptions, no put downs, and there's 4 principles of mediation. One is that I'm impartial as your mediator, which means I don't take sides. This meeting is confidential. It is voluntary. And the last principle is called self-determination, which means that what you choose to bring up and talk about is totally up to you. Any questions? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, great. So let's start by just asking who would like to go first and tell me what brought us here today.
I'd like to go first.
Okay, great.
I don't write discipline rules
Okay.
unless I'm at the end of my rope and my patience. And I have had a problem with Jonathan. He is so talented, but he won't do anything in my class. I called home, so I tried talking to him, and he's just so good friends with all these people, and he can just turn a classroom upside down.
Oh, wow. So what I hear you saying is that you don't like to write discipline referrals, but you're feeling like you're at the end of your rope. That Jonathan is very talented, but you don't see him doing anything in class, and you even called home and talked to him.
Right.
But he also kind of turns the class, what you said, upside down? Is that what you said?
Yes, that he needs. When he gets in his moods, which lately has been since spring break. I mean, we've only got like 20 days left of school, and he just keeps me from being able to teach.
And we'll continue on, Dean. So just for what we've seen so far, where the introduction happened, the teacher shared her point of view, and we're going to be fast forwarding it now to the student, and so we can hear his side of the story. And then finally, we will skip and fast forward to the resolution, per what we discussed earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and speed us up to where Jonathan speaks.
No, but I would like to know.
Okay. Anything else?
Right here at 8:34.
So I do appreciate it. So Jonathan, let's talk from your perspective. What brought us here?
Miss Denser's 7th hour,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just really boring, so I don't really like to do anything in that class.
Oh, so you're saying it's boring and you don't like to do anything in that class, 7th hour.
I'd rather do something else in my time.
Oh, okay. This class is 7th period choir, and just out of curiosity, do you like to sing? Do you like choir? What you feeling about singing?
I've sing in my church since I was young, but that's about it.
Okay, so you sing in your church. When we heard Miss Denser talking, she said that there was kind of a shift, that in the beginning part of the year you were really, participating in solos, you did really well, getting along with the class and doing the work, and then something kind of shifted. And is that your perception too, that something kind of shifted around spring break?
No, I mean, I guess you could say I was more excited for high school. first semester, but now it's boring.
Oh.
The same thing every day. So.
And you're a freshman, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of like, sometimes they call it a honeymoon period, kind of like when you first got to high school, you were really kind of participating in everything, but then it kind of shifted for you that you kind of boring.
Yeah.
I want to talk about kind of sometimes when a shift happens, I want to explore more about the good times before things got bad, so to speak. And what were your feelings about the class kind of when it was feeling good and you were participating?
I mean, it was fun because I had my friends in there, and there's a lot of girls, so
Okay.
it's fun.
So you had fun in the class?
Yeah.
I want you to tell me something that you appreciated about Ms. Denzer as a teacher.
She always has snacks for us if we're feeling hungry, or like if we need anything, she'll give it to us.
Okay. I wonder how you were feeling about, kind of the way things have turned out in the class, kind of moving forward. You got a DR. What is your feeling right now about kind of where things are at?
Yeah, it's kind of stupid because I'm not the only one that does bad things in the class.
Oh.
So, and like, I would do more, but we sing like stupid classical songs all the time.
Oh. So I heard you kind of say two things. One is that you feel like other people do things that you get in trouble for. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you also said something about the songs that are classical.
The music's pretty boring.
Okay. When Ms. Denzer was talking, I also felt a lot of emotion coming from her. And did just listening to that, did you get any kind of feeling from that?
I mean, I feel bad for acting out, but I'm just mad that I'm the only one that got in trouble when other people are talking all the time.
Okay, so that's something that you felt really strongly about. That, well, I should ask you, is that something you feel strongly about?
Yeah.
Okay, and now, Ondine, I'd like to fast forward to minute mark 1531, where the resolution begins happening and the ultimate solution takes place.
Oh, that's really sweet. So, do you think anything more like about the music itself?
I mean, if we did like more fun music, like more modern music instead of like Beethoven or anything.
Okay, like give me examples of some music that you think would be fun.
Like some rap songs.
Okay.
Yeah, we should do rap songs.
Okay. So you'd like to see some rap songs,
Yeah.
not like the classical stuff all the time. Okay. Good feedback. Okay, so I'm going to kind of summarize what we've said so far, Jonathan. You started out saying, hey, class is boring, and that you'd rather do something else. And that you do sing, you sing a lot in your choir and things like that. You said that, as a teacher, Ms. Denzer is, gives snacks out and things like that, but that you found the classical music kind of boring. But then as we kind of kept talking, we found some more insights that really was other people not getting in trouble for the same thing. You were doing that like on a scale of 1 to 10. That was like an 8. That really bothered you, that you felt like you were getting in trouble for things other kids did. And that really what would be helpful for you if you are like doing something you shouldn't be doing is for Ms. Denzer to kind of pull you aside. And you also thought that maybe if the music were mixed up a little bit, like using rap songs and not just the classical, that would help you re-engage. And you also said something really insightful, and that is that if you were nicer, you started helping again, that would help things. So those are some, really, really good insights. Is there anything else you'd like us to understand while we're here before I kind of invite you to speak to each other? Okay. Well, again, thank you both for being here. So I'm going to summarize what I've heard. Basically, I've heard about a very talented singer, somebody who sings in church, somebody who has an older brother who's also been in this program. So Miss Denzer was prepared for you to come on that first day, and you delivered by participating in solos and participating in state. She called you the ideal student, and were popular with the classmates, and just doing everything great. And then around spring break, she observed just a change and a shift. And as we kept talking, it kind of got revealed that, you know, you liked the class and the snacks and things like that, but you were doing really bad because you felt other kids were not getting in trouble for the things you were getting in trouble for. And you were also getting kind of bored with the music itself because a lot of classical music was playing. And so what you had thought was that maybe you would feel better and kind of get to reboot the relationship with Ms. Denzer, kind of talk to you privately rather than kind of calling out your name. And also maybe mixing up the music a little more with rap. And also that you yourself could work on being nicer in the class and participating more. So I think we learned a lot. I guess before I open it up, I just want to ask you one thing that I didn't ask before, and that is when Ms. Denzer, you know, did kind of call you out or give you yours, how did that make you feel as a person?
It was embarrassing.
Okay, so you thought that was embarrassing. That's good insight too. Okay. All right. It sounds like you don't want to be embarrassed in the class, and that's good for us to understand as well. So at this point, I'd like to invite you both to speak directly to each other. I know you like to sing, and I know that there's been some wonderful connections in the past between the two of you. And so please, you can speak directly to each other and develop your plans to move forward.
Jonathan, I'm sorry. You're right. I hold you to a higher standard than others. Just because I see so much potential in for me to have somebody that your quality come through. I just didn't realize that I was embarrassing you and being unfair. And I promise you that I will not say your name out loud. I need to help you refocus. I'll come over and speak to you. And I appreciate that. You'll stay in the class because you really are very talented. And as for the rap, when I went to school, I never learned anything about rap. I learned about Western European music, but I'm willing to try. And maybe if you need me some songs, I can try to find music for it, and I'll do my best. And if I can't, maybe I can bring in a guest clinician or something who can do a rap piece.
Sorry for acting up in your class and being rude.
Is there anything else you'd have me do differently? Are you sure? Because, you know, I can't fix what I don't know about.
Just don't treat me the same as everyone else.
Okay. All right. I apologize, and I hope that tomorrow when you come into class, we can start over. Thanks.
I'm just kind of really moved by the fact you both apologize, because at no point in this mediation do I require apologies or make people say they're sorry or things. So when it happens, it's really from the heart.
I was just aggravated, you know. Teachers are human too.
But I think it was really big of both of you to, you know, kind of express regret and make an apology to each other. It shows you care. So sometimes I take notes on the plans people make, and all I've really heard is that you will definitely come over to.
I'd really like him to be in his seat in the gallery.
Oh, okay. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so Jonathan is going to kind of be in C when the bell rings. If you have to redirect Jonathan, you'll come over to him personally and not call out his name. Okay. And it sounds like you want to be treated like everyone else. Okay. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I'm going to take notes and type up what the plans are and just send them to you. And if you need, you know, will you make a copy for Jonathan, then you both kind of have a reference point for what the plans you made today.
Thank you for the snack. I missed lunch today. Busy.
Yeah. You're very welcome, and thanks again for being here today. Okay, bye.
All right. Thank you so much, Ondine. Could you just give us some insights into what we just observed? What we just
So what I like about this video is that it shows how individual it is, you know, if you worked in a school and you were told, oh, this teacher and student are having problems, you would make assumptions in your head. Or if you were told, oh, this student, is frustrated, or the teacher's frustrated, you might, consult your own background and say, oh, well, in my, as a consultant, I think they should do A, B, and C. And you would be, just projecting your own viewpoints, basically. The power of mediation is that this teacher heard firsthand how her actions impacted Jonathan. And Jonathan heard firsthand how his actions impacted the teacher. So it touches on sort of human empathy that is very, very powerful. And you also see some cultural components here. Adults forget what it feels like to be a teenager or a child. They forget that sending a student out of class for misbehavior is really humiliating and embarrassing. Or just saying a student's name out loud. But then another student might not bother at all. You don't know until you ask. So this teacher was able to learn a lot about how the student felt and also what would engage this student. But this student also was able to learn that he, what he could do to get things back on track. So not only did they learn and gain insights, but they also have a path toward improvement. And I really believe that it took a mediation for these insights to be revealed. It also shows that the traditional methods that people use in schools, which is like calling home and talking about the problem or sending the student to the office, don't work, because in a lot of cases, the student is now really mad at the teacher. And that's where you get, oh, my teacher hates me. And it has no incentive to improve. What you didn't see in this video, which by the way is available on YouTube and you can watch the whole thing. There's also a part at the end, which we didn't show, where the teacher and student debrief a little bit and talk about the mediation. There's also a student mediation example. But anyway, what you see here is that they benefit from this meeting in a way that no other intervention could have achieved.
Thank you for that. So let's talk now about your book, okay? Because you actually wrote quite a bit on this topic. And skipping to page 44 of your book, by the way, which we encourage folks to get on Amazon, so it's available. But when it comes to actually mediating between teachers and students, why should parties like this mediate?
For one thing, teacher-student relationships aren't talked about enough. There's all these assumptions that, it's a traditional model. The students go in, the teachers will do their part, the students will do their part. But things have gotten complex lately. And, we're talking during a pandemic, we're having this conversation. The myriad needs of the students, of the adults in a building are just, really hard to wrap our mind around. So creating a place for safe dialogue and that promotes understanding is just a common sense solution. It fosters an environment of restorative practices. It's caring. It also improves understanding across racial lines, because we have a lot of teachers in the world who teach students who have completely different backgrounds than they grew up with. And it really helps them understand each student as an individual, not maybe the stereotype that's in their head or assumptions in their head about their students. So it really broadens their understanding. And the part I like is that it models effective conflict resolution skills and, just helps improve the relationship. And schools, everyone thinks of schools as academic institutions that are about, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we forget that schools are about relationships, and that's what fuels everything.
Thank you so much for that. And please, Ondine, tell us, so following on to what you have said, how is mediation helpful for teachers, for students, and for both?
Great question, Natalia. When teachers get trained, there is no, just like when I went back to graduate school and thought that I'd find some book with best practices, teachers are not trained on, things that'll work for every student. There is no book that works for every student. And this is true for experienced teachers too. There's no one size fits all. So as I said earlier, kids are coming with trauma, mental health issues, poverty, learning differences. And that this mediation helps teachers understand their students to be more effective teachers. So that's really the goal, is to forge that relationship to benefit all. Why students like mediation and why it's good for them is that, as you saw in this video example, in a mediation, and I don't care if it's a kindergartner, students are treated with dignity and respect. They're given a place where they're heard and validated. And when you consider traditional discipline, like, be quiet now, you're just here to listen to what you did wrong, this really gives them a chance to express themselves. And it also gives them a chance to gain empathy, because not only are they able to express their point of view, they're able to hear the teacher's point of view and hear that, as Ms. Denzer said in that video, teachers make mistakes too. So I think it's really powerful. And really, that was one of the big motivators for me to also promote this practice, because I was so moved and touched by teachers being humble in these meetings and showing their human side and taking responsibility for their actions and their biases and things like that. And when I saw teachers own that in front of the student, I was really wowed. And I thought, this is just good stuff. And, the reason for teacher-student mediation in a school is that there's an interest. Mediators like to talk about, what's the interest here? Well, the interest is teachers teach and students learn. That's the interest. And that's what we want to maintain in a school, an effective operation where education is happening and learning is happening.
Thank you. So how does mediating between teachers and students, how does that differ from the traditional model that we're all used to when we think of mediation, right? Because Natalia and I, we do a lot of mediations where we have the two parties come and they're both maybe in two different rooms, or they're both at a table together, and we try to help facilitate a discussion that's going to lead to a conclusion. So how does that model differ from what you're providing here?
Well, thanks for that question, Mac. When I hear about mediators, it's often in negotiations, contract negotiations between like the teacher union and the district. And it's like, okay, we need to call in the mediators, because things have gotten, to a high level of disagreement. Or you might hear mediators are called in a special education dispute where parents are fighting for, due process, fair hearing rights and things like that. So yes, and I have a lot of respect for the mediation you do, which is not this. This is simple, on the ground floor, and really about relationship building and relationship repair and restoring, goodwill among the parties. So what I consider this mediation is more preventive almost. Let's get in early. These two teachers aren't communicating. It's affecting the whole department. I did a mediation, which I talk about in the book, with the cafeteria staff. They were calling in sick. They were stressed out. They were just miserable in their relationships with each other. We did a group mediation, and people were crying and hugging at the end. Sometimes you just need to address the fact that conflict is so unhealthy for people. And of course, mediating with students to help prevent bullying and to help students not fight and not get in this, continual loop. Students utilize it because they say, we need a mediation before I, knock the lights out of this kid. So when it's in part of the school culture, it's seen as a tool to benefit everybody at the ground level. So the other difference, as you saw in the video, is that it's a face-to-face meeting. There's no like caucusing at this level. This is really a face-to-face meeting, and using that model that you saw there.
Thank you. And please tell us, because from what I understand, in this mediation, it is not only about just solving the issue that arose between the parties, but it's also about moving forward. And in your book, you are describing that it might require drafting a plan or a contract. Can you please speak some more about self-determination and how parties are to develop their own plan to move forward?
Thank you for that question, because I think self-determination was something that I was most impressed with and I was most humbled by, to be honest, because when you're in a school and you've been trained, and I was even, I've trained psychotherapists. So of course, I think I have all this knowledge about human behavior and needs and so forth. And it's like, get out of the way, shut up, and let these people solve their own problem, because they know a lot more than you do. And, it was just, had I not brought mediation to schools, I would never have learned this really vital lesson. Because the fact is that the two parties, they're emotionally invested, especially a teacher and student. They need to get back on track, but they know the details. They know the context. They know the setting. They know the timing, and they have all kinds of, ways of fixing things that I would have never thought of in a million years. That is unique to them, and I just give one example, which is, Johnny, how about if you feed the salamander every Thursday? Would that help with your restlessness? I didn't know there was a salamander in that class. They can come up with solutions, but also they have a lot more solutions than we give them credit for. And that's both true for adults and children. And it's just really nice to behold that. And like I said, humbling.
Thank you. Ondine, can you touch a little bit about students with special needs and how this type of school mediation can help them and how it's tailored to them?
Yes. I think the theme I want to get across, whether we're talking about teenagers, students with special needs, or, young children, is that each student is unique. And each student's issues, you want to approach with a fresh, open mind. So let's say a student, you want to have a mediation, and the student is on the autism spectrum. Well, people with autism have trouble, imagining another person's perspective. They have these, social difficulties. So for example, if you're going to do a mediation with someone on the autism spectrum, you'll want to make sure in advance of the mediation that they fully understand what's going to be happening. If they want to have a trusted adult in the room as a silent observer, they're certainly invited to do that. So, just a pre-meeting to really go over what to expect, and also that there might be some things said that are unexpected, but that's going to be okay, and they'll be safe and so forth. If you're mediating with a student with a cognitive disability, you'll also want to have a pre-meeting to go over some vocabulary of feelings words, to talk about different concepts such as, trust and fear and embarrassment, or, some concepts that you need to explain a little further. So you always want to know that you can adapt this for anybody, really.
Thanks once again. And back to your book again, Restore the Respect is the title of it. Why have you chosen this very title?
Well, respect is such an interesting thing. As I said earlier, we're all taught, go to school, respect the teacher, respect authority. Adults are always right. But, what if they're flawed too? What if they make mistakes? Adults do make mistakes, and, they're the first to admit it in a mediation when we make it safe for them to do so. There's times where a teacher will take out their bad mood on a student or pick on a student. I mean, I've seen it. And if a student feels that, it can have a really devastating effect on them. And the other reason I chose respect was, I've heard students say over and over and over, if the teacher doesn't show me respect, why should I show him respect? I've heard that so many times, hundreds and hundreds of times. So respect is something that's a very powerful thing. It's a dignifying thing that everybody wants and everybody needs, and everybody's entitled to. And, it's just, and I talk about restore because it kind of taps into that concept of restorative, which is healing. And also I say restore because I know that on day one, that teacher and that student enter that classroom with high expectations and good intentions. So that's what we want to get back to. We want to restore that.
Thank you. So in chapter 5 of your book, you discuss what is required of a skilled school mediator. Can you give us a little bit of a tidbit of what all the top things you would say are I guess, skills that a school mediator should have?
Well, one of the things that's hard for a lot of adults in schools is they have an agenda. They have an agenda of what they think students need to learn. They have an agenda about the values they think they're there to impose on students and so forth. And that's fine, and that's legitimate. However, there has to be room for listening to other people. There has to be an open mind. And so that impartiality is really important. Mediation can be performed by, anyone in a school, but when they're in that role of mediator, they need to wear a mediator hat. And I, even as a school psychologist in a school, I would say to everybody, okay, I'm putting on my mediator hat right now because I'm impartial in this meeting. Sometimes I take it off and I tell them I was taking it off, but you want to have impartial people. You want to have trustworthy people who aren't going to blab about what went on in the mediation. There has to be trust that it is a dignified, confidential meeting, except for, of course, when a mandated reporter has to report something that has to be reported. You want the mediator to have self-knowledge. Therapists when in training are taught you have to know your own stuff so you don't project it onto other people. So if you've got issues or you're disgruntled about something, same thing with the mediator. You've got to know your own biases and triggers and things like that. So you're not, sort of bringing it into the meeting. There's also a real need for cultural openness and sensitivity. We've heard of things like implicit bias. Know what's going on. Learn about the communities that you're working with. Go into the communities. Have dialogues with people. Read books. Learn about the cultural richness of your students and the populations in your schools. That gets past that one-dimensional stereotyping. You have to have emotional intelligence, kind of like a comedian. You've got to be able to read the room, check those nonverbal cues, know when to lighten the mood with maybe a change of topic or, a quick story or, bring in humor. You have to also have good communication skills. And I talk about in the book, and the way I was trained is that when people are telling me their stories, I'm using reflective listening with verbatim quotes. And I thought that was really interesting because when you're trained as a therapist, you're always taught to really understand the emotion and deepen it and name it. In mediation, you don't name anything, you use their words. And I thought that was really interesting and very effective because it shows them that you heard them. And also the last thing is just to be warm and nurturing and upbeat. And that's where that thanks and praise comes in and mining for gold. You're really acknowledging that this is kind of stepping out of people's comfort zones to have a meeting like this, but that they're brave to do it and they're courageous. And, especially teachers stepping out of their traditional role to get on that level playing field. That's something that students appreciate so much because they see their teacher took the time, and also students learn that their teacher cares about them in a way that they didn't realize before, and vice versa.
So out of the box, I just thought of seeing all these benefits of school mediation, seeing how helpful it might be. And I need to tell you that even this video is very persuasive in this respect, because upon a simple and actually taken out of just ordinary life example, you can show how much can be done and how these people are being brought closer together. Can you please tell us, upon your vast experience, what can be done? How can we empower and enhance the school mediation?
Well, thank you for asking that because I'm sort of on a mission. My mission is to bring mediation to schools because it is just makes so much sense for the reasons I've discussed. I often give talks to school people, to school administrators, to school psychologists, social workers, counselors, like, please, get this book, practice mediation. I have a free webinar on my website, ondinegross.com. I'm sharing this information as freely as I can outside of, the book that people have to buy. But this is a wonderful opportunity today, Mac and Natalia, and I thank you because I feel today I get to talk to professional mediators, a large part of your audience. And here's what I want to say to professional mediators. It's like, please share your knowledge with schools. We need you. We need mediators. My dream is that professional mediators read my book, get these ideas and expand their practice and approach schools, approach districts all over the world and say, you know, somebody like me could really help you all. I could, because in my dream world, there's mediations between teachers and students. There's frequent mediations between students, and I devote a chapter to that in my book. And the data is that that really is very, very effective. But my real goal is that mediation be brought to adults, because that doesn't currently exist. And I'm jealous of corporate structures, because corporate structures have spent vast amounts of money on organizational psychologists who come in. I have, a daughter who works in corporate America. They teach those people how to have difficult conversations. There's a lot of attention to conflict resolution in workplaces and how to get through these things. But schools are left out. We don't have organizational psychologists. K through 12 public schools and schools all over the world, we don't have any of that support. And yet you can have two reading teachers who haven't spoken, in a good conversation for 10 years. You can have a special education teacher and a co-teacher who don't get along, and they're in the same classroom every day. And I don't care how professional they are, the students are going to feel that tension. You have a parent who is afraid to have a conversation with the teacher because they're afraid that their student will get maligned the rest of the school year if they speak up. You've got, there's some, like I said earlier, cafeteria staff. There's so many places where a mediator could come in and just clean it up in 55 minutes with this model that's in my book that's so simple. And I've done this with adults. It's not widely practiced, but when it's, you just feel like the mental health of everybody is just going to be so relaxed and so improved, because, the stress we take home, in my opinion, we can take home a lot of sadness and a lot of grief about the sad stories we see in among our students and in our schools and in our world. But the stress that keeps us up at night is the person who didn't say good morning to us, or the person who, was rude to us in a meeting. That's the kind of stuff that can really aggravate people. And it's like, what was that about? And you go in your mind and you're, so a lot of that can get so cleaned up with a simple mediation meeting. So my dream is that professional mediators, train people in schools to mediate themselves, or propose that they're on a staff, on a consult, as a consult to school districts, so they can be dispatched to different schools, different needs, different times, to do group facilitation mediation, to do individual adult mediations, to mediate between teachers and students, you name it. It doesn't only have to be when the lawyers are called in at that high level. Get in on the ground floor and help people improve relationships and mend and make amends and all that good stuff. Mediators have this skill. And I say this as a trained therapist. Mediation is different. It's a unique set of skills, and it's really, really effective.
And thank you for that. So I have the perspective of having been a classroom teacher, right? I taught beginning 2003 in a school called Garcia Elementary in North Houston. And I have the perspective of not being an attorney and a mediator and working to help people resolve their disputes. So I absolutely agree. I wish that almost 20 years ago, when I entered the classroom, I had the opportunity to be sat down and told, hey, this is an option. When you have conflict with your students, you can request that you and the child go and see the school counselor, maybe, who's a mediator as well. Because what were the options given to us? The options were, hey, little Johnny, you're being bad, go to the principal. Or I'm going to bring down your color, because we had a color system to confirm behavior. Or I'm going to call your parents, right? And it was just constantly a hostility between a teacher who wants to be empowered, respected, and to do their job, teach, and a child who may be misunderstood or doesn't have a way to communicate things effectively, or maybe even because they're going through personal things at home that then spills over into the classroom, right? But if we provide this other avenue, this is why we wanted to have you on today, because this is something that's personal to my heart, this whole topic of mediation in the schools. If we provide people this other avenue, it might provide another way to resolve these conflicts in ways that won't blow up. And so anything can be mediated, whether it's truancy or inter-teacher conflicts or teacher-teacher teacher, student, student, student. So anyway, I appreciate it greatly, the work you're doing and the training that I went through with you before. It was a really, really good and helpful discussion to have. So we're going to be wrapping up now. Natalia, is there anything else?
Yes, I'm out of all those relationships that we've been discussing, student-student, teacher-student, there is one perspective that perhaps we might be missing. And I wanted to ask you if this is a way forward for the mediation at school. This would be parent-teacher mediation. What do you think about it and how to progress this direction? I think that many teachers are stressed by the way they are treated by the parents. There are many biases amongst the parents against the teachers. Sometimes the communication or the image a parent has of the teacher comes from the kid, who actually sometimes exaggerates about certain things or behavior from the teacher. So do you think this sort of mediation, parent-teacher mediation, would it work? Would it help? Is there any work being done this direction?
This is a great question, because parents and teachers need our help as well. And I can't stress enough how helpful this would be. I don't think this is widely practiced. I don't think the mediation model is widely practiced, which is why I'm here to ask that it be done more. You know, a typical parent-teacher conference is, well, the parent might just show up at school unannounced. You know, the teacher is then already on the defensive. The teacher is nervous because they know the parent has a complaint. Often parents don't go directly to the teacher. They go to the principal to complain about the teacher because they want the principal to fix it, but they don't want the teacher to know it was them that made the complaint. But they don't realize in most, union negotiation contracts that the principal is obligated to tell the teacher when a parent makes a complaint about their child. So, that backfires anyway. And then it's a very tense meeting because everyone is on edge. And the teacher is completely on the defensive because, the parent is disgruntled about something. And, everyone's making assumptions that the other one is not, operating with courtesy or understanding. And so when you take that kind of fraught model and push it aside and say, let's rethink this. Let's put a neutral, impartial mediator in a room, and let's just kind of let each person tell their full story. Where did this start? Everyone came to that classroom with high expectations. When did things go awry? What happened? I guarantee that people are going to learn details that they had no idea about before. Johnny was blue and he wanted to be red that day and he thought the teacher was unfair. Well, how did the teacher know that Johnny felt that way? She was never told, whatever it is, there's always going to be misread situations. So when people tell their full story, there's a lot of what therapists called aha moments. And if it's done by a skilled mediator, the mediator is keeping the tone in the room very constructive. And by the way, speaking about tone, the thing that is really one of my favorite things about mediation is that people's tone of voice when they're talking to the mediator is a completely different tone of voice than when they're talking to each other, when they're upset at each other. So whether that's a teacher student or two adults who are, tense, when they're talking to a mediator, they're not tense. They're just telling their story. So that really is calming and very helpful. So it's just a great model for how to conduct a meeting. Again, each person gets their full story out, the details, the aha moments, and then, the full arc of just what exactly happened here and the feelings, you elicit the feelings around it, and then the invitation for them to move forward. And I just think that when the feelings come out, when the full understanding of the details and the misread situations come out, it's a completely different outcome. It's super helpful. I'd love to see it done.
Thank you so much, Ondine. So we're going to be wrapping up now, but we appreciate anybody who is watching this or listening to this. This video and podcast will be available for further consumption. So you can always share it with somebody else who might be interested, especially a principal or a teacher who may want to know more. So again, Ondine's books on Amazon, and we encourage you to get it. But at this point in time, we are signing off. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney mediator and arbitrator working from Houston, Texas. But based right now in Warsaw with my partner,
Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate mediator, and with really very special thanks to our dear guest Ondine. Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to do that with us. I really cannot say how grateful we are and how much of an impact it can have for the future of mediation and of school mediation, and therefore on many people's lives.
yes.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And Ondine, we did put ondinegross.com as your website. So it's just your name, ondinegross.com. All right. Okay, everybody. Signing off until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you.